So I'm with Mark Cameron and we're about to do the first of a chat with the CEO. So why are we doing this, Mark? What's the thing?
I want to keep the communication going with the bowling community, with the clubs and the centres and the members. And I was sitting at my desk last week and I thought, and I started to write one of those newsletters you do CEOs and management do every month, and I thought, this is boring. I think I was boring myself with what I was writing. So I thought, well, why don't we? If we're investing in this technology and we want to communicate, why don't we invest in video? And as we all know, video is one of the best forms of communication, short of actually having a face-to-face. So that's why I think just it's a good communications tool. It's an opportunity for me to put, I guess, a Bowls New Zealand perspective on some matters. We may be a one and done scenario here, Kevin. We get no one watches and we move on. But let's see how we go.
Oh, look, I agree 100%, Mark, and I can say from being an old bowler myself, is that I think the word communication now is such an important part of what we do in the sport. And now you've been in the job now for 8 months, and I must admit we've seen a lot of communication. So, firstly, why bowls? What was the driving force to get involved in a brand new sport, so to speak, for yourself?
I think in any interview you say it's the challenge. So definitely the challenge in this role and this sport. I enjoy the sport. My family is brought up, I was brought up in the sport, like a lot of kids coming out of the 70s and 80s. Our grandparents and our parents played bowls, so I was always in touch with the game. But it's just the challenge. It's 8 months has flown by for me. I was up at Orewa last week, and I was talking to Tony, who's the president up there, and he's talking to me about how by August they'll have a covered facility, a covered green at the Orewa Bowling Club. That's change, that's passion, that's energy. That's not Bowls New Zealand driving it. That's Tony and the Orewa Bowling Club driving that with the support of the North Harbour Centre.
So am I reading from what you're saying there, Mark, in you'd say, it's not a new role now that you've come to grips with what's going on out there, that one of the projects from a Bowls New Zealand perspective is that the clubs are the driving force of change, and Bowls New Zealand are the sort of assistants, the catalyst behind that, but it's about encouraging change and moving forward.
Oh, very much so. I mean, Bowls New Zealand, we don't deliver the sport into the communities. It's our bowling clubs that deliver the sport into the communities, and not our centres either. So our role, there's a little bit of leadership there. We need to make sure, and we're going to talk about that hopefully later on in terms of some of that direction that Bowls potentially needs to take. Our role is to provide a bit of leadership, but it's very much to support and to encourage. And you would have seen that hopefully, with some of the website stories that we're currently doing, where let's celebrate those people that are delivering the game already and those people that are actually driving change. Let's talk about it, and let's make it. We don't want to almost hide our sport in the background anymore. Actually promote it.
I think, Mark, we've seen recently with the Bowls New Zealand website some what I call some very, very positive, encouraging, real life club stories, and what's going on in the deep south, and what's going on in the Greens in Gisborne, and that's fantastic, I think, for those clubs and for everyone that looks at the Bowls New Zealand website, that to see that Bowls New Zealand is actually in touch with and surely now, after 8 months, you must have some clubs that you've been to, because I know you've travelled the length and breadth of the country, but you must have some clubs now you can say, well, I've seen some really positive things, and even in the smaller regions, in the smaller clubs.
All over. There's positive stories. Someone asked me the other day, we're talking about the website, he said, are you worried that you're going to run out of stories? Not at all, because you just go from club to club and you'll see different stories and different issues and how they're dealing with it. You go from club to club and you meet different people, and people's what make our sport. They've got backstories that we want to tell as well, so we can tell stories about our clubs and we can tell stories about people, and then on top of that we've got all these tournaments.
I think they make the positive add-on from that. What I'm seeing is that a number of the clubs and centres and events around New Zealand have picked up on what Bowls New Zealand are actually doing insofar as communication via the website and social media, and they are very much now following that, and they're putting their own things in there. So, we had a good chat here today, and it's our plan that we're going to continue this sort of dialogue. And so, after now you're 8 months in the role, what have been your highlights?
Oh, I think, geez, I hadn't planned for this question almost. Meeting and talking to people, I think that's been, I've enjoyed it. It surprised me a little bit. Because it's they make for long days sometimes when you spend the entire day talking to people, but I've sincerely enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the little bit of freedom I've had to actually start talking about and creating some of this change. A little bit of a surprise in some respects, but I've enjoyed that freedom because it's meant that I could explore areas and talk about things that I thought might be a little bit taboo within the bowling community. So I've enjoyed that side of things. People, you always say people though, because ultimately sport and business or whatever, and life comes back to people and relationships with people.
I think the sport has been waiting for change, because change is about our survival. Because if constant remained constant, the sport is facing a major dilemma. So the market out there has been waiting for change. And so the driving aspect now is working with the clubs and the sport to make that change.
Yeah, very much so. And that's our role here at Bowls New Zealand, is to support, and we talked about it before, encourage, demonstrate change. But it's happening. This isn't a lot of sports, and I've been around a few sports now. A lot of sports still are. They're still out there making the statement saying we need to change. Bowls, we're already changing.
Not everybody will agree, but the change is what they've been waiting for. And I think as those changes come out, there'll be more positive things coming out of it. And
I welcome the debate. I welcome the passion and the energy that can come out of it. Is it going to be perfect, the change that we make? No, not at all. We're going to improve upon things. We're going to learn things from some of the decisions we make. But do I think that 80% of the stuff we're doing is right? Yeah, I do. I can't tell you which ones that 80% was, because if I could, it wouldn't be an 80% number. But there's an energy, and there'll be things that we'll do that going forward that people will raise their eyes about a little bit. There is a strategy around this though, when we touched on it before in terms of we need to grow that casual participation. How do we grow casual participation? Well, we don't solely talk about membership and Saturday bowls. We talk about short form bowls, and we talk about more people coming down and playing in corporate events and Christmas functions and whatever it might be, or we open up our bowling clubs on Sunday afternoons. We need to try these things.
Take the fences down.
Take some of the fences down. But when we take the fence down, let's tell the story about what happened with that club. So we took
Correct.
the fence down there. What happened? And there'll be there's stories, and the stories will vary too.
So just in closing, Mark, I also think it's worth stressing to all those people out there watching this on the Bowls New Zealand website that we want to hear, or Bowls New Zealand want to get feedback. They need, it's not about, don't hide behind the curtains. If you've got something to say, let's talk about it.
Yep. Oh, look, I should have said at the start, almost one of the reasons for putting my mug on this video is that I welcome people coming up and saying hello when I'm at the clubs or at tournaments. Come and say hello. Yes, by all means, write emails and send letters, but some of the best ways of getting your messages across is to have these face-to-face conversations, so that I don't know, I can hopefully provide a sense of credibility or integrity to some of the strategies that we're doing, but I'm prepared to listen and hear other people's views. And I think in terms of leading a sport, this is exactly what it should be. I don't have all the answers, but I don't mind having a good old yak to determine what that answer might be.